Good evening, YouTube. Ty Metalhead Weatherman here. Hopefully you guys are doing well. We have had a very long weekend. Today's been a lot quieter, but there's a lot more weather on the horizon. There's a lot that I didn't really get to talk about over the course of the weekend due to severe weather and a few other factors here. But we are going to be getting into a much more active pattern here, and even the threat of fire danger is now coming into play too. And for today, it's mainly going to be centered over the southwestern parts of the plains here and hanging back a little bit closer towards the Rockies. This is the time of year when fire season kind of gets started, really starts to take off into the later months of spring and into the summer. We'll talk more about fire weather in the future, but since we have so much severe weather to deal with, as you can see here, it's going to be kind of hard to cover all of that right now. But we will be working on it in the coming days, though. So rest assured, anyone that's dealing with fire weather as a hazard, I do see you. That being said, let's go over what we have going on right now. Marginal threats for severe weather tonight, mainly across the Gulf Coast states. Cities like Houston, New Orleans, Mobile, Biloxi. Just a few of you guys could see some wind and hail tonight. It's not going to be a big threat, but it's not zero, so definitely just something to keep an eye on. Thunder roars going indoors. That's the main thing to really take into account there. I don't expect anything crazy from this tonight. Day 2, it's a pretty similar deal. Once again, marginal risk. This time, all hazards are at a marginal level here. So you can see a little bit of everything, but it will be in very isolated abundance. Those two words do not go well together. Isolated abundance. I don't know what I was thinking there. I'll let you know I'm tired. But that being said, day 3 is actually going to be the quietest day this week, which will be Wednesday. But we'll start to see atmospheric river conditions ongoing across this region. I've looked and I've tried to look and see what sort of deal that the Weather Prediction Center has for any sort of flooding potential. They haven't really shown anything just yet. I think tomorrow it will change. So tomorrow afternoon, I'll probably make a video honing in on this a little bit more. But as of right now, we may even also see a marginal threat with severe here across the West Coast. I'm mainly concerned more so across Southern California once again for the threat of significant rainfall and maybe some flooding. So that being said, we'll be keeping an eye mainly across this sector right here. Maybe a sector a little further to the north too. But it's going to be pretty widespread across the board, and then really, this area can be extended more so towards the Nevada region as well. May even go as far as Utah too. If that circle's drawn badly, I apologize. That being said, though, then we get to the real animals in the room. So we got a day 4 slight risk and a day 5 enhanced risk. During this time of year, it's not something to be ruled out, but unfortunately, considering what we've seen, it's going to be even less desirable than before. That being said, we have a more so conditional type of setup for day 4. Forcing an upper air ascent is going to be pretty minimal, so these storms are not going to have a lot of lift. There's also going to be a strong cap in place with this. We'll get into the parameters of that probably Tuesday or Wednesday. So we're not going to get super in depth tonight. We'll keep this video a little bit on the shorter side if we can, because there's also a wintry side that we need to cover here too. So basically, to make things a little bit more paraphrased with this, we have a conditional type severe setup, but if the storms can overcome some of the parameters working against it, like the capping inversion, we could see isolated supercells with potential for all hazards, which would include a threat for tornadoes. Hard to say as of right now whether or not anything would be of major significance just yet. I do think there is an increased potential for hail with this as of right now. So that's what we have going on for Thursday's threat. Friday is the big day that everyone's been talking about. I've been seeing it all over my news feeds and even had people in my comments talking about it, but there is a very sizable enhanced risk as well. It goes pretty far to the north as well with this severe threat. This goes all the way from eastern Iowa and a large portion of Illinois here, all the way down into Little Rock and central Arkansas, and areas in between. Missouri, you're in there as well. Springfield, you are just outside of that. Jefferson City, you are in it. St. Louis, you are as well. Springfield, Illinois, you're in there. Peoria, Memphis, you're back in the line of fire once again. And then this is a huge slight risk area. But when you see the models, you'll see just how wide spanning this potential threat area is. And it may even be stretched out further to the east too for Saturday, because it's not like the parameters necessarily seem to be going away from what I've seen so far. Of course, with this being 5 days out, this is very much prone to changing and will probably look different by the time we get towards day 2 and day 3. But some areas in the slight risk will start out west. Just outside of it, we have Des Moines, but we also have Kansas City that's in there. Joplin, Missouri, you are in there. Tulsa, you are in there. Ada, Oklahoma. Dallas, Waco, Fort Worth, Shreveport, Greenville, a lot of these same areas that were affected by Missouri and Mississippi from the tornado on last Friday could be in line for more storms yet again. Also have Nashville. We have a large part of central Kentucky in play now. We have all of the state of Indiana involved. We have Chicago in there too, and this even stretches as far north as Milwaukee. So that's just some of the larger population centers that could be in line for some significant weather there. This is a hazard that has this is an event that could have all hazards on the table here. So we'll have to keep an extra close eye on Friday, because it could be yet another volatile day of weather. Day 6 through 8, it's all predictability too low. So that's just a sign of the pattern being as active as it is. We'll go ahead and start looking at the models here. We'll start out with the Euro and basically look 10 days out. Keep in mind this is the lunchtime model. We can't look at the 18Z model because it does not go out far enough. So we're going to go with 240-hour run here. So basically today and tomorrow, relatively quiet in comparison to what we can see here. And this is where things start to come into play. This is where our atmospheric rivers are going to come into effect here. It's also going to bring a lot of cold air with it. So on the other end of this, not only could we see some storms towards the south here, we could also see some pretty significant snow. Towards Tuesday night, Wednesday for this region. I'm thinking mainly around here is where we'll start to see that rainfall come into play. And this will mostly stay as rain for a bit here. But what will end up happening as time goes on, as the system rolls forward here, we'll start to see a little bit of warming going on towards the core of it. But you can start to see that little moisture flow beginning to develop here. This is where our low is going to start to take shape here. This is a positive to maybe neutrally tilted trough. And through here, maybe if these storms were able to break through the cap with the or poke a few holes in it, or the capping inversion as it's called. I have a video that discusses what that is. It'll be in the description, by the way. But if we can get storms to break through this capping inversion right here, we could see some storms begin to fire across this area here. Could be isolated in nature, but all hazards are possible. It will be expected for it to form kind of on this dry line, which would be somewhere back here. So we'll go back and switch over to this really quickly. And you can kind of see those darker colors representing something a little bit along those lines. I do kind of lean towards more of a damaging wind threat with that, more so than a tornado threat, but not to say that it would be zero. Or at least that's what I'm indicating right there. With the subtle forcing, though, nothing's really off the table right now. So that being said, let's go ahead and get into the big day, which would be Friday. This is heading towards the 8 o'clock Eastern time hour, and you can see a lot of activity over here right now by this point. And we'll start to really see things begin to go off here as we head into the evening and overnight hours. Looks like we have a pretty stout warm sector just by looking at the values that are on here, these little small values on screen. So there is probably some potential we could see a secondary area that pops up over here towards the southeast even as we head into late Friday night, early Saturday morning. This actually looks even more stout on the GFS, which I'm going to show in a minute here. But also what ends up happening as we head towards Saturday after these storms happen, on the backside of this, we'll get some moisture to pop up here. And we could see some snow more or less towards the south side of this system here. Somewhere right along this area. We could even see some freezing rain here. But right where I've drawn that circle, we have to watch out for some wintry precipitation. Oh boy. So we'll watch that move off to the northeast here, and that could come into play towards the end of the week. And then we'll have a couple of quieter days, maybe a couple of clipper systems heading through the northern plains here, and then also the Great Lakes. Then we have to watch our next big storm system come in towards the start and middle part of next week, Tuesday and Wednesday from the looks of it on this model. So here's the GFS right here. It's a pretty similar deal through the first 10 days. Here's our big bombed out cyclone. And then watch what happens Friday here in particular. Thursday looks about the same on the Euro as it does on the GFS, but Friday, watch what happens as we get into the early afternoon. Things really kind of take off here. It's a frontal boundary that seems to develop here. Could also be a dry line. The warm sector is still very stout, but it seems like we have a little bit better environment for a bimodal type event where we could see a line of storms more or less here based off of this vorticity map here, but just out ahead of that we could see maybe even several rounds of severe storms. I don't like how this weather pattern's looking, to be honest, because I saw a post from Reed Timmer saying that this reminds him of an event that a weather pattern he saw 10 years ago with had extreme activity and also bared some pretty extensive consequences as far as weather was concerned. So, not to scare anyone, but we are in springtime, folks. So you need to be on your P's and Q's. So we'll drive further along into this pattern here. See the winter storm developing. We see these little clipper systems coming through. Here's our next big one over here. We could be seeing that towards the start of April here, especially as we get in midway into the first week. Could see a linear type event with this so far. Not to say that there can't be any sort of discrete supercells that form up with this event too, but it's kind of far out to tell, so it's going to be hard for me to say exactly what will happen with this right now. This is towards April 6th, which would be Thursday. Then on Friday we could see another stalled out boundary and maybe more storms firing here as well. Then after that we could see yet another little low pressure develop. More severe storms possible with that. But considering how far out we are now, we're getting into no man's land territory where basically anything and everything that we see from this point, from 300 hours out, can be pretty much changed and turned over on its head, really. But that's just a a symbol of how active the pattern looks so far right now. And this is just me looking at the operational runs. The ensemble runs are a little bit crazier, but if I did that, I'd probably have an hour-long plus video, which I'm sure none of you would want. This video is probably already starting to run long anyway. So we'll go ahead and look at the temperatures, the dew points, and then we'll work our way towards the reflectivity, and then maybe get a sneak peek at some potential snowfall totals for areas that could see snow. You can pretty much imagine who is in line for it really at this point. So it's really no surprise. No surprises here, but the temperatures are going to be a big deal, especially for those areas further to the north, also to the south here, especially regarding our severe weather threat. So throughout the course of the week, Tuesday is the only day the southeast really sees a little bit of a cool down, but even then, we're only cooling down towards the 70s for a lot of us. And towards the Carolinas, we're sitting in the mid to upper 60s. A lot of cities through Georgia, a lot of cities through Mississippi, still sitting around 65 plus. Texas is sitting towards the 70s plus. Few areas could see 80. Florida's baking right now. We're even starting to see a couple of 90s in there, especially towards South Florida, which is crazy. It was crazy to see that at this point towards the end of March. Desert Southwest is a bit warm, but we're about to see some big changes out there. So what ends up happening towards the middle of the week, get some cold air starting to try to push back in, and what we'll end up seeing is we'll get this warm sector to pop off, and then this cold air is going to start to rush back out west, forming the negative PNA pattern and creating a pattern change that will lend itself to an increased severe weather threat. Here's a warm sector on Thursday, getting those 70s and 80s back into the picture across some parts of Texas here. Oklahoma and northern Texas are going to mainly stay at the mid to upper 70s. When we get to Friday, look what happens to this warm sector here. Very abundant, very large warm sector develops here. We could be seeing temperatures, even where those severe storms forming, around the mid to upper 70s. Few 80s towards the southeast, 90s all the way over towards Texas. Then we see that cold air rushing in behind that front. Doesn't quite make it too far to the south before we already start to begin our next warming trend. And this is pretty much going to be the pattern that we end up seeing throughout the next 10 days. And any storm systems that interact along this pattern are going to end up producing some pretty intense weather. And towards the end of this run, again, here's something to note. This is a perfect example of what a negative PNA setup looks like. Cold out west, warm to the east. So that's what our warm sector is already looking like for severe weather. We already know where our cold weather is going, our coldest air is going to be, so that increases the snow potential. And then here is what our moist sector looks like, and this is going to be a key component here for the severe weather. So basically with this, we don't have to look up to the north for this, unless you want to see the warm sector really starting to infect here. But the warm sector is really jetting pretty sufficiently at this point into Texas, parts of Oklahoma. And then watch what happens as we get into Friday here. Normally you want a dew point of about 55 plus to start really being concerned with severe weather. We got 60s making it almost all the way to Chicago by Friday here, by the early afternoon hours around Friday. Hard to say right now when the time for the potentially the most volatile weather will be, but we're watching real close. We're about to be watching really close, and then even then, this warm sector, this moist sector off to the south, along with the warm sector, could potentially pose problems for the southeast on Saturday. That clears out by Sunday, and then we have yet another system that comes in, and we'll have to watch that for the next chance of severe weather to start off the month of April, which is nuts to think about. That we're already in April and we're already really active at this point. And then, of course, towards the end of this period here, See yet another moist sector starting to develop along with the warm sector. So troubling times may be ahead. Not going to say that that is the case for sure, but especially if you're off towards the eastern half of the country, towards the Ohio Valley, southeast, keep a close eye on the weather, because there could be something heading your way. So we're going to run this in a loop here real quick and just kind of get an idea of what to expect as of right now. Alright, so here's our storm system. It's moving out, and then here is the atmospheric river coming into play here. This becomes our next big severe event. Pretty sufficient coverage with this, nothing compared to the GFS. Then we get into April here. Here's our next little sneaky storm system here. A couple of Clipper systems. And then we'll have to watch yet another system to end out the first week of April as well. So now, with us going through that really quickly, let's go ahead and actually take a look at what snowfall totals might be ahead. We'll also take a look at rainfall totals too. So no real surprises here with this. We already know that the Sierra Nevada, given the fact that we're getting colder temperatures again across this region, especially towards the mountaintops, big time snow, could see feet easily, about 4 feet plus within the next 10 days seems feasible. Some of these mountains further towards the eastern half of the Rockies, definitely could be something there with that too. But we're starting to see increased totals to the east of the Rockies now. We're seeing Denver starting to get into the action again. Could see up to 4 inches according to the Euro with this. Could be a bullseye over here towards North Dakota right now, where we could see up to maybe a foot or more of snow within the next 10 days. And of course, this area over here, anytime I've mentioned winter weather this year, pretty much this corridor right here from the UP of Michigan all the way towards northern Minnesota and a good chunk of Wisconsin here, you guys have been in just about any video this year in regards to winter weather. I'm sorry you guys have gone through that. I'm pretty sure you're tired of seeing this. I'm pretty sure you're tired of me or any other meteorologist mentioning you. Just want the snow to go away, I'm pretty sure. But unfortunately, we have more to come here. We have to keep an eye on the northeast right now, because we could get some sneaky totals with this too. We could see about 3 inches to 5 inches. Some pockets getting some isolated totals that are a little bit higher than that. But we're also still trying to figure out just how this storm is going to trend, where it will track, and how the temperatures will interact along with that change, with the changes in track that we could possibly expect. But that's what the Euro is showing us. This is what the Canadian is showing us. Pretty similar look across the board, and actually the GFS isn't too much different. There is a little bit more of a bullseye further to the south with this. This is more towards southern Minnesota. This is now getting into Iowa. It's getting towards central Wisconsin, and more so away from the UP of Michigan. Even so, still plenty of snow for you guys over there. And we do see a little bit of a trend further to the south on the southern flank of the snow belt here. We could see some increasing snowfall towards Kansas with this setup here. And then even the Oklahoma Panhandle and some of the Panhandle of Texas even could get in the action here. Totals otherwise are pretty much the same here. And then here's what the GFS looks like. A little bit different, but not too much different. But it's kind of like in that middle ground between the Euro and the Canadian here. Totals are about the same when it comes to Sierra Nevadas and parts of the Western Rockies here. As far as the Northeast concerned, totals are about the same. Most of the heaviest snow seems to be north of the border once we get away from the Rockies and Sierras. So we'll switch this over to rainfall in just a minute here. I'm trying if I can get this to work here. Okay, there we go. And while we're doing that, I don't know why why this popped up still. Okay, there we go. This is what the blend of models here is looking like. It's a pretty similar deals over the Sierras. Big times totals over there. We could see up 4 or 5 feet plus there. Across the Rockies, it's a pretty similar deal, about 3 to 4 feet easy over the next 10 days. Interesting thing I've noted here is that there's now bullseye with this over towards South Dakota more so than North Dakota. Still a pretty big pocket of snow that develops in that area that I just never can seem to stop talking about. Then over towards the northeast here, we could see nice little coating of snow, about 2 to 3 inches in a lot of regions here towards the inland parts of New York. The further we get towards the coast, the totals really drop off pretty rapidly. So if you're over towards New York City, maybe Philadelphia, don't expect too much out of these next couple of events. That's pretty much what we see going on with the snow threat here. When we look towards rain over the next 10 days, this is looking towards the Euro here. Biggest pockets of precipitation mainly seem to be over towards the Ohio Valley. This is a perfect correlation with the severe weather threat. And then we could also see some increased totals of precipitation towards the Ohio, West Virginia, and Pennsylvania lines here. Then, of course, the increased precipitation across the west coast from the atmospheric river. This next cyclone is going to have a nice little flow that brings plenty of moisture across this region. How this moisture will look will be based off of the cold air that will be present at the time there. Then we'll switch over to the Canadian real quick. It's a nice little bullseye that pops up over here towards the Tennessee Valley. This isn't surprising given the fact that this is a severe weather area most likely. And then of course up towards northern Cali also seems to be favored for increased rainfall. I'm trying to figure out why they aren't putting southern Cal in the mix. I think we might be starting to lose some of that moisture there. But this is also based off of the latest 18Z runs, and the Euro 18Z doesn't really cover up to 10 days. It only covers about 3.5. Go to the GFS here. Slightly different look, but pretty similar details. 2 bullseyes over here, one towards the Tennessee Valley, the other towards the Ohio Valley. This looks like it trends a tad bit further to the south as far as the heaviest totals over towards California. And then we will, last but not least, look at the blend of models. Yeah, there's a lot of favoritism towards Northern California for the heaviest totals of precipitation here. Of course, towards the northern Sierras, we're gonna mainly end up seeing that as snow. And then we have a pretty good middle ground here with the blend of models as far as what we could be seeing as far as rainfall is concerned here, up to 2 to 4 inches possibly there. Maybe some locally higher totals depending on how many thunderstorms travel over said area. But it's the end of this video here. A lot to cover, I know. I'm going to try to timestamp this as best as I can, if I can remember to. But that being said, if you found the video useful, you know what to do. Hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already. Share this video to anyone that could be in one of those severe weather areas in particular, or anyone that's out west that it could be a little unprepared for this next round of crazy weather out west. But it's springtime, you guys. It's an active season, and looks like the start of it's going to be pretty crazy. So make sure that you are weather aware. Make sure that you are prepared. That way there will be no need to be scared. Anyways, I'm going to get off of here and call it a night. This has been Metalhead Weatherman. Until then, take care, and I'll see you in the video tomorrow.